words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be mindful of thee, O Lord, my strength and my salvation. Amen. Please be seated. Oh, folks, I gotta tell you, I'm getting old. I don't even have grandchildren yet, but I went out with a boatloads of kids yesterday and I can barely move today. We had an experiment. We started a new ministry arrangement with Covenant House. That's the local foster care home up in Dunellen. And Mary and Rick and Susan and I took some children from Covenant House along with Bella out to see the manatees. And it was a lot of fun, except it was freezing. It was 38 degrees when I left home, and I put on a wetsuit and I jumped in the water, and guess what? Only me jumps in the water, plus the kids. And we had the guides, of course. Susan went with the girls. But I have a 7, and 8, and 11-year-old boy holding on to me. And it was a little bit, well, not a little bit, it was extremely stressful. Because we had seen this film, Don't Touch the Manatees. So what the kids want to do? Touch the manatees. So here I am, every so often I'm jerking a kid back on his foot. You know, he's trying to touch him and everything. And, but it went well, but the girls got cold quickly and got out of the water, but those boys stayed in for almost 2 hours. And after a while, I think it was more fun poking me, the giant black manatee in the wetsuit, than trying to find these gray ones in the shallows. And they began to hang on top of me, and basically, it was easier, instead of swimming, just hold on to me, and I would tow them to the various spots. And so when I got home last night and was preparing for the 5 o'clock service, I don't know how I finished. I don't know how I got up the road. The reason why I wanted to do it separately from our own children here at Shepherd of the Hills is that if we were going to have a fiasco, I'd rather have it so that I could pretend it never happened. So nobody would know, except for Mary, our senior warden, that we had a terrible, terrible fiasco. But we brought back from the ocean as many kids as we took out, which was a good thing. And we also had a wonderful, wonderful time. And I didn't sit the children down, and I didn't catechize them, and I didn't basically be all churchy and heavy-handed to them. But I know the experience they had coming out with us, just having fun with adults who liked them and cared for them and wanted them to be enjoying themselves, I think makes a tremendous difference in their lives. In Florida, we don't have as well developed a Social Security net as other states do. It's Florida. We sort of expect that. We don't pay taxes, and we don't get some of the things that you pay huge taxes for up north. So we have in our county maybe 1,000 children that need foster care, and we have one residential facility that can house 6 of them. And so some will go to parents, but the majority get shipped out of the area. And so we have great needs. And in Florida, by the time the county, the Department of Children's Services takes you away from your family, there's a really good reason why you're taken away from the family. Because these are children of neglect, abuse, mother going in and out of jail, father never being there. And one of the things that struck me as I spent the day with these little boys, because the little boys basically were around me most of the time, was how seldom they had actually talked to a man. The men that they knew were their mother's boyfriend coming in and out of their life. He may be there a week, a month, whatever. Or they were authority figures. But nobody had ever actually sat and just talked to them as a man to a little boy, explaining, understanding. And we went to Pizza Hut after it was over. And one little boy proceeded to put 3 pieces of pizza in his mouth at the same time. I didn't yell, I didn't scold. I said, well, there's plenty here, one at a time. And one of the house parents sort of said to me quietly, well, this is one of the little boys where we have a problem of him squirreling away food in the house. He's 7 years old, and he'd never really been fed properly by his mother. And so he has learned that to eat, he's either got to eat vociferously, voraciously, all at once, or And for these children, the experience of just kindness and love and listening to them talk, listening to them talk to me and me talk to them, for them to talk to Mary and Susan and Rick and the people who came out that day. That was an act of Christian mission. Why? I didn't beat the Bible. I didn't put those kids down, open the prayer book and say, what does the first line of the catechism say? Who made me? God made me. It was living a life of Christian love and witness. Not beating the Bible, but making the Bible live through our actions. The reason why Shepherd of the Hills, and you must be sick of my saying this, but I never get tired of saying it. The reason why Shepherd of the Hills is the fastest growing parish in the Diocese of Central Florida, we continue to hold that rank every year for the past 6-7 years, is because this is a church that doesn't beat the Bible. We don't make a fetish of the institution. We don't worship the bishop or the building or our status or our prestige. The ministry of this church doesn't start from me standing up here, going down to you people, but the ministry of this church happens across pews, across aisles. Why do our kids, who we have, and you saw little Aubrey run out all excited and joyous. She likes to come to church. She will nag Michelle to come to church. She wanted to stay for the sermon. Never yet. Why do these children feel this way? Because they feel part of this community. They're loved. They run wild, not wild, but they run around and move comfortably in the parish hall during coffee hour. Because they feel they're part of a community that loves for them and cares for them. Now, why am I sharing this with all of you? What has this got to do with anything other than to talk about Covenant House? It's about what Paul is writing in his letter to the Corinthians. This is how Paul sees the church being built. Not with silver-tongued preachers where you've got to pay somebody to be a little Billy Graham or be so slick and polished. Now, the biggest building, the best part, it's all wonderful to have those things. But the work of the church doesn't happen going this way, but communally, in action. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Look at our little green handout, our Bible readings for today. And for the epistle, on the back page, we have 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. The first chapter of 1 Corinthians, Paul writes about the problems in Corinth. Paul started the church in Corinth. He was there for almost 18 months to read the book of Acts and got it off the ground before he moved on to begin this work elsewhere. After he left, they had guest preachers and they had various people, and over the course of the years, the church started to factionalize. One of the people who came was a man named Apollos, and Apollos was a Jew from Alexandria who had become a Christian, and he was a silver-tongued orator. We hear about him in the book of Acts. This was the Billy Graham, the Oral Roberts, one of these guys who could just get up and put in air conditioning in hell. He could raise that much money, so he's so good. And the people, but see, Apollos was living in to their understanding of how a preacher, how a teacher must be. See, in the Greco-Roman world, rhetoric, the art of speaking, was considered the highest, greatest virtue. And you were considered a virtuous man, not by what you did, but what you said. So if you stood up and gave a wonderful speech, touched every emotional button, roused every feeling, got everything argued so perfectly and logically and rationally, you were as good as your words. Sounds like politicians today, doesn't it? It doesn't matter actually what you do. You don't have to live out these fine words. You just have to say them so other people hear them. And what Paul is saying is that I'm not Apollos, and I don't want to be. I'm not here to entrance your ears, to tickle your fancy, to entertain you, to do any of this stuff. I am here, and here's what he writes. I did not come proclaiming the mystery of God to you in lofty words of wisdom. Mystery of God in lofty words of wisdom. Those are code words. The mystery of God, mysterium. This is Greece, and the other religions, the pagan temple across the street, celebrates the mysteries of Dionysius, and the mysteries and the secret wisdom of Diana, of the Ephesians. In other words, religion was not something available to all, open to all faith, but rather was sort of like becoming a Mason or something. You went through these rituals, the deeper you got, the more you got, you're told. It's like Scientology. It was a religion where you paid to play. You got more knowledge by paying more money, by coming deeper. And Paul's saying, I'm not here to tell you any mysteries or lofty wisdom, words of rhetoric, to quote all this stuff in fancy, beautiful language, to make you feel wonderful because I'm talking to you. I'm here to preach Christ crucified and Him alone. I'm not here to teach you philosophy. I'm not here to teach you history. I'm not going to sell you a tote bag or a coffee mug and tell you I'm not another Deepak Chopra. You can either watch me on public television on Friday night or come here and listen to me. I'm here only to talk about Jesus Christ. And I'm not going to do it in a slick or polished fashion. I'm going to keep it straightforward and simple. My speech, and I come to you not as an... Let's just pause for a second. This is the church Paul founded. Paul's a big shot in the Christian world. He's the founder of this church. So Paul could walk into this place and say, you people have messed up, and I tell you so because I told you so. He had the authority, I guess, in that world to do that. He was the founder. He was Paul, after all, and he could basically say, do as I say. If you want to be a Christian, these are the rules of the franchise. If you don't like McDonald's, form a Burger King yourself. But this is how you're going to do it. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say he's speaking on authority. He's speaking in power. He's speaking in man-made constructs of who is important and who is not. He's coming to them in weakness, in brokenness. He's coming to them as another human being with all the flaws and failings of the next guy. He's not setting himself up as a little powerhouse. He's come to preach Christ crucified and nothing else. And my speech, and I come to you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling, and my speech and my proclamation were not made with plausible words of wisdom, clever arguments, but with a demonstration of the Spirit and of the power of Jesus Christ. I've come not so that you hear my words, but so that you put these words into action and live out your faith. See, Paul is saying faith is a mystery. If you just rely on clever arguments, there's always going to be somebody cleverer than you are. There's always going to be, you read this book, this is the answer. Then another book comes out. And then another book comes out. Or there's always going to be a smarter guy. There's always going to be a richer guy. There's always going to be a better, cleverer way forward. If you leave it into the world of human power and wisdom. But if you put it in the mystery of God, not in some esoteric learning that you have to pay to get to know, but if you turn it over to the Spirit of God and live lives of holiness, then you get to understand it. Let me give you a real-life example of how this works. Probably in the last generation that grew up with only one TV in the house. Do you remember those days? Alan had no TV. Of course, Grandpa. We'll turn the wireless for you all. No, but in the late 60s, early 70s, I'm the oldest boy in our family, and we had the single television. I went away to school, went off to college. In 10 years I came back, my brothers are still home, and everybody's got a TV in their bedroom. They're everywhere. But when I was a little boy, you watched television. It's not, See, the internet these days, it's an individual thing. You look on the internet by yourself. You watch TV by yourself. But in that time, television, entertainment was communal. When I went to college, nobody had televisions. There was a television in the dorm room, so if you wanted to watch a sports game, you went and watched it with everybody else. If you went to my grandparents' house, if I went to my grandparents' house and they wanted to watch TV, you watched it with them. You only had three choices, ABC, NBC, and CBS. But it was a communal sense of what you were watching. And I remember talking with my grandparents in particular. My one grandparents liked to watch these shows, and when I would visit them, they'd let me stay up late and watch them. And my grandfather would say, well, you know, Johnny Carson still is not as good as Jack Parr was. Who's Jack Parr? Well, he's dead, but he was really good. Or actually, and my grandmother would say, nobody beats Ezra Levant. Who is Ezra Levant? Oh, well, he's dead, but if you had only known him. And we'd watch these television shows, and one person I remember watching on To Tell the Truth was a man named Orson Bean. Orson Bean was somebody, and Orson Bean was not Paul Newman or somebody where everybody in the world knew who this man was. He was a particular type of American phenomenon. He was a Jack Parr, he was a Johnny Carson, he was Ezra Levant. He was somebody famous for being witty and clever, a public intellectual. Orson Bean was hit by a bus this week and died. I have to say, when you're in your mid-90s, if you gotta go, that's the way to go. Get hit by a bus in Beverly Hills. I mean, come on. Orson Bean died this week, and I read his obituary yesterday. And I had known a bit about Orson Bean because I'm interested in these sorts of things, and his obituary gave part of his life, but then I read something else about Orson Bean that I wanted to share that wasn't included in his obituary in the New York Times. Orson Bean was from Cambridge, Massachusetts. His father worked as a policeman for Harvard University. And he was a second cousin of Calvin Coolidge. He was a Yankees Yankee, if you will. And he grew up and went off to the Second World War, and after the war, didn't go to college, but he went into performance. He became a stand-up comedian. Then he made his way to Broadway in the 1950s and became very successful in Broadway in comedy, and then was starting to appear on television. And in the early 1960s, he started to appear on what we call game shows, To Tell the Truth, What's My Line? And Orson Bean was so good because he was so clever. This is a guy who could top anybody else. Bennett Cerf would have a witty comment, Orson Bean would come and even knock that down. And this was a world where Orson Bean's whole being was being clever and witty and silver-tongued and having the right word at the right time to make everything work. And his career moved away from Broadway, made from commercial TVs, and he really had a good living, basically appearing as a guest host on The Tonight Show, or these various talk shows of making Dick Cavett look silly, things like, I mean, he was good at what he did. But one of the problems, and this did not appear in his official New York Times obituary, was that they would film at night in New York City because it was live television. And when he's done filming, or when he was done working on Broadway at 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, he could not go to sleep. Because he was so alive, so wired, and the only way he could relax was to drink. Alcohol helped him relax. And then in the 1970s, he moved to cocaine. It helped him to relax. And as his career sort of got bigger and bigger, his talents got less and less and less, because he had become a full-blown alcoholic drug addict. And he couldn't top Bennett Cerf anymore, and so he lost business. And at a certain point in the late 1970s, he said, and it was a little piece that he wrote about his life, I was living in a flat, an apartment in Venice Beach that had a Murphy bed. which gives you an idea of how big this apartment is. His wife had left him. His children had walked away from him. His career was down in the toilet. He was too doped up and too bombed out to put together coherent sentences to entertain people, to command the money that made him so famous. And his friends said, you really, really, really need to go to AA. You really got to get your act together and stop drinking and stop the drugs. So finally he said, yeah, I'll go, but I'm not into this God stuff. My family are New England Puritans, and when I was 15, 16, I said, I'm done with that. I'm an atheist. There's nothing out there. Nothing. It's me and the world, and it's my life, and I can do or not do whatever there is. So I'm happy to go to AA, but I don't want to hear this God talk. And so his friends took him to AA, and the first thing that people said to AA is, you need to acknowledge that there's a higher power. And he said, well, I don't want that to be God. And the man leading the group said, fine, call it that tree. Call it the cosmos. Call it something, but you need to understand that there's something greater than you outside of you. You don't have to call it God. And so Orson Bean began the process of AA. He was able to stop drinking. He was able to come off of drugs. But he was such an intelligent man. He said, look, I'm fooling myself. The higher power outside of me is not that tree. It's not the cosmos. What is it? And I don't want it to be God. Well, he was starting to go to meetings. And the speaker at this one session he would go to was a reformed convict, a biker type with tattoos and the leather jacket with no sleeves and everything. And a really, really tough guy. Before they had the 3 strikes and you're out laws in California. But he had found religion while at San Quentin, had gotten clean, gotten sober, and gotten back into the world. And then in the evenings he would be an AA group leader, sponsor, I don't know what they're called. And he wanted to ask this man, what really is happening? What is it? And after a meeting, he followed the speaker out to the street. And just as he was about to talk to him, an LA policeman rode up on a motorcycle. Black jacket, white helmet, everything. And Orson Bean says he pressed himself against the wall thinking, oh God, he's finally been caught. Uh-oh, he's fallen off the wagon. And the policeman gets off his motorcycle, walks up to the speaker, wraps his arms around him, and the other guy wraps his arms around him and says, I love you, man. I love you, brother. And the policeman gets back on his bike and rides away. And Orson Bean said, when I'm just, he now had an opportunity to ask him a question. What was that all about? And the ex-con said, well, that's one of my babies. What do you mean? That's, he's an alcoholic like me, like you. And whenever he's got problems, and if he feels the temptation, he gives me a call. Orson Bean saying, man, oh man, this is like cats and dogs, Democrats and Republicans, bikers and motorcycle cops. I mean, this doesn't work in this world. And Orson Bean said, what do I need to do? And the guy said, when you get up in the morning, get on your knees and pray to God. Well, I don't want to do that. Just do it. Do it. Well, can I do something else? No, you have to do that. Well, I don't believe it. I don't care. Just do it. And at the end of the day, get on your knees and thank God for the day you've had. The next morning, get on your knees and pray to God that this day will be glorious. And Orson Bean said in this piece, I was just stubborn enough to do it. I knew it was stupid. I mean, he said, God, if people could see me doing this in my little Venice Beach apartment, they'd just think I was a lunatic. Getting on my knees and praying to somebody who's not there. But he kept at it. And after a while, he knew something was there. And he was honest enough to say, this is God. I don't understand what this God is. And then he began to reach back into his heart, into his mind, and remember this faith that he had been taught as a small child. He went out and he bought a Bible. began to read the Bible. And Orson Bean became a Christian with the mystery of the power of the Holy Spirit. See, Orson Bean's profession was to use words of rhetoric and wisdom and cleverness and to talk whatever anybody else said. You couldn't argue with him because he was so quick, so bright, so witty. He had everything there. He was a brilliant man. And being a Christian was foolishness, stupidity. It didn't make any sense. You weren't going to get ahead in this world by following the dictates of some dead Jew in Palestine 2,000 years ago. But Orson Bean surrendered to the power of the Spirit, and for the last 25 years of his life, until he got hit by a bus, what happened? His wife returned. His children came back to him. His career blossomed. He discovered this medium, the internet. And people would pay to listen to him give these podcasts, where he would just talk for an hour and people would pay and advertisers would pay for him to talk. And he had more success after the end of the What's My Line, the last 25, 30 years of his life, than he ever had before. Now, this is a wonderful story. It almost sounds like it's out of Hollywood. But it is. But what is Paul telling us? Exactly what Orson Bean lived. I am not here to speak lofty words of wisdom. I am not here to be clever with my rhetoric. I am here to speak of the mystery of Christ crucified and to turn my life around and live it and work it out in action, not in words. Orson Bean is a man whose living, whose power was in words. Yet his fullness, his completeness as a human being didn't happen through words. It happened by getting on his knees and in embarrassment praying to a God he didn't know and didn't even believe. And God answered him. Friends, I hope none of us have to go through the life experiences that he did, of addiction, of divorce, of children walking away, of a career being destroyed because of what you put up your nose or down your throat. But if you have, there's a way back, and it's through Jesus Christ. When we work with the children in our community, we do so not to teach them of an unchanging, cold, formidable church that has existed for 2,000 years. I haven't. Orson Bean is very good at words. I'm very good at intimidating little boys. I'm big. When I have my suit on, I scare them. Is that the power that Christ calls me to use to reach little boys? It's the power of love, of friendship, of example, of having a silly chat about the merits of baseball teams, about talking about the excitement of seeing these giant animals that these boys who've lived such lives of deprivation, they never knew what a manatee was. They heard about it in school, but they could actually see it. And touch it quickly before the Fish and Wildlife Police saw it. Love lived out is why this church is a success and why so many other Christian churches are failures. Because there's no love. Not love from the pulpit, not love at the altar, not love amongst the pews. And which is a silly thing really, because what is, if anything, this church about? It's about that cross, which is a symbol of God's love. God so loved the world that he gave his only Son to the end that all of us shall be saved. Christ went willingly to the cross out of love for you and me. If we don't have a church that is founded on love, that's not founded on hierarchy, on oppression, on violence, on bullying, on cliques, but is founded on love, we should close up shop and turn into an Elks Lodge. But we hear about love. As you go out in the world, remember what our catechism, which, hoping in 3 or 4 years, sure so I'm going to be able to put those little boys through confirmation class. Oh, they'll suffer then. One of the things I'll ask them are, who are the ministers of the church? The first ministers of the church are the people of God. Not the priests, not the bishop. The first ministers of the church are the people of God. The people in the pews, whose call is to love God, the Lord their God, with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love their neighbors themselves. Not just do it in a sort of theoretical, detached way, but living that love out in action, in the world. At the end of this month, we have our ministry fair. Betty Pats will organize. You're organizing, aren't you, Betty? Yes. Thank goodness, otherwise I just volunteered you. Between our services, we'll have booths for each of the ministries of the church. I'll give you a little example. This morning, Bobby Keene stood up and said we need more plastic bags for plarners. And we had some visitors today, and she's talking about plarners, and I can sort of see their eyes going, what are these people talking about? Is this like some Episcopal thing that I'm not allowed to know about? Plarners are a group of people that meet from 1 to 3 on Friday. Lorraine, I think you're the head of that ministry. Linda. Linda. Which Lynn? Lynn Meyer. It's an L. It's either Lorraine or Linda or Lynn. One of them. We meet from 1 to 3 on Fridays, and they take the plastic bags from Publix, Walmart's. How many hundred to make up a mat?
700.
700 make up a mat. And Sue, I think you were telling me you saw a homeless man. You were coming out of Walmart.
Yes.
He's got a plarn blanket. These blankets the homeless can use in our county. They don't hold bugs, they repel water. It's a way of doing crafts, but more importantly, it's a way of serving those in our community who have needs. This is one of dozens of ministries that you'll see at the ministry fair. See, the church, the real church, the true church, not the building, not the vestry, not the bishop. The real church are the people of God in action, doing the work of God. Not all of us are called to be plarners. If I went there, I'd probably set them all on fire by accident. I don't know. I am not that sort of crafty type person. You may be. You may be called to work with children. You may be called to work with animals. You may be called to sing. You may be called to serve at the altar. You may be called to go to the, like Anne, to the farthest reaches of the earth and share the good news of Jesus Christ.